A stranger's act of kindness reveals forbidden love amidst danger. Neon splashed coldly against the slick streets, rain falling with a relentless rhythm that sounded like a verdict hammering down again and again. Ethan's leather jacket was soaked through, each drop clinging to him like the weight of the day's failure. His breath came ragged, visible mist swirling in the icy air as he crossed the deserted intersection under the harsh glow of flickering street lamps. Behind him, the glass facade of the newsroom gleamed, the place he once called his stage now a cage of whispered doubts and public humiliation. His editor's voice still echoed in his ears, sharp and unforgiving. "Where is the story, Ethan? You're spinning wheels. We need the truth, not excuses." His fists clenched at his sides, nails biting into the soft leather. The crowd in the small office had stirred into uncomfortable silence, eyes darting away, no pats on the back, only the cold press of disappointment. That crushing moment, the failure, the exclusion, the whispered questions about his ability burned more fiercely than the winter wind. Ethan's emerald eyes flashed with a mix of shame and fury, the raw edge of longing for a breakthrough that could redeem more than just his name. He turned, pushing through the rain with no destination, just a desperate need to escape the suffocating walls of defeat. The city around him was a blur of reflections, a watery kaleidoscope of broken lights bouncing off the wet pavement. Cars passed by, their headlights cutting sharp lines like slashes across the night, unnoticed. The neon signs sputtered, casting fractured rainbows, illuminating the darkness with harsh beauty. An alleyway yawned ahead, shadows deepening, secrets tucked into crumbling brick and flickering fire escapes. Ethan hesitated, the ache in his chest a storm of doubt and determination. A distant siren wailed, bending through the foggy air, a soundtrack to his spiraling thoughts. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, the steady pulse of a city that never truly sleeps. The rain hammered harder, cascading down his face, mingling with the exhaustion and doubt. His clothes clung to him, the roughened collar biting at the nape of his neck, a shield against the storm, yet no match for the tempest inside. His eyes caught a flicker, a movement by a lamppost. A woman stood there, head bowed, shoulders trembling under the weight of invisible tears. She was drenched, the black fabric of her coat soaked and clinging, hair plastered to her pale face. Her silhouette was a beacon of vulnerability and silent desperation amidst the noise of the storm. Something stirred deep within Ethan, a flicker of warmth cutting through the ice. He slowed, hesitation melting into an instinctive urge to reach out. "Hey," he called softly, voice rough from disuse. She didn't look up. "Are you okay?" Her silence was a fragile weight. Then, a single sob broke free, raw and piercing, cleaving the tension that gripped the night. Ethan stepped closer, the rain casting halos of light around them both. "I don't know," she whispered, voice cracking. "Everything's falling apart." Ethan's gaze held hers, fierce and gently, promise of refuge in the storm. The city's pulse throbbed around them, relentless and indifferent, but here, in this wet, shadowed corner, a fragile connection sparked, a thread woven between two broken souls. The rain kept falling, each drop a tender witness to the uneasy alliance forming beneath the neon-lit dark. His fingers brushed slightly against a delicate silver locket hanging from her neck, the clasp just visible through the soaked fabric, a symbol of love and hidden vulnerability. Ethan inhaled sharply, heart pounding, eyes alight not with defeat but the first ember of hope. A world of secrets waited behind the rain-steeped shadows, and for the first time, he felt the stirrings of a story not just worth telling, but worth living. The alleyway rumbled softly with the distant echo of a city breathing, pulsing, whispering secrets in the rain. And in that fractured light, Ethan and the stranger stood, bound by the fragile promise of redemption waiting to be unearthed. The rain blurred the sharp edges of the neon-lit city, casting everything into a restless haze of light and shadow. Ethan wandered through the darkened streets, his soaked leather jacket sticking to his body like a second skin weighed down by failure and doubt. The cold droplets slid down his face, mingling with the sweat of humiliation as the echo of his editor's words tortured him in his mind, harsh, biting, unforgiving. His green eyes, usually bright with raw determination, now flickered with a fragile uncertainty. With each footstep on the glistening pavement, an unease settled deeper in his gut. The city, the same city that had once fueled his dreams, now seemed a vast, indifferent labyrinth, whispering tales of power and danger he feared he might never unravel. Turning a corner, Ethan paused beneath a neon sign buzzing with electric blue. The reflection fractured in the puddles beneath him, a symbol of a self he barely recognized. The weight of rejection pressed against his chest, a constriction that made even the rain feel heavy, oppressive. His jaw clenched, a silent struggle raging beneath the surface as anger and despair warred for control. Half-formed thoughts crashed against each other. Was he capable? Had he lost himself in the pursuit of a truth too volatile to grasp? Could he survive the shadows without becoming one with them? In a shadowed alley, darkness pooled like a living thing. The shuttered windows and graffiti-stained walls held secrets Ethan's eyes were desperate to decipher, and yet every meaning seemed cloaked in deceit. The cold dripped from fire escapes, dripping black iron and the smell of wet concrete. Footsteps hurried past, shadows converging and dissolving into the mist like ghosts hiding from the light. The sudden scrape of heels on slick stone startled him, and he turned sharply. Rain-slick hair clung to a woman standing beneath a flickering street lamp. Her face was hidden, but he could see the tremble of quiet sobs, the taut shoulders bearing a visible weight of sorrow. Ethan's heart ached inexplicably, a flicker of warmth breaking through the storm in his chest. The urge to reach out, to shield her from the cold and the dark, stirred something fragile and resolute. "Hey," he called softly, voice rough from disuse but earnest. The word barely traveled the space between them, swallowed by the night's oppressive wetness. She looked up then, eyes shining wet and raw, meeting his gaze with a vulnerability that both unsettled and ignited him. The rain intensified, washing the city in a shimmering veil as Ethan stepped closer, unspoken words lingering between them, despair and hope tangled in the chilly air. In that moment, beneath the heavy sky alive with distant thunder, a fragile alliance took root, a spark born from shared loneliness and the distant promise of redemption. Ethan caught sight of a silver glimmer nestled against her chest, a delicate locket, a symbol of love and hidden stories, reflecting the neon glow like a beacon in the night. His breath faltered, the storm crashing both outside and within. The city exhaled in rain and light, a canvas at once cruel and tender, where the stories of two broken souls began to weave into one. And as the night wrapped them in its moody embrace, Ethan glimpsed, faint and flickering, a path away from despair towards the storm's eye, where love might yet bring redemption. The neon haze clung to the rain-slick streets, a liquid glow dissolving the sharp edges of the city into shadows and shimmering reflections. Ethan's coat was a second skin, soaked through as the downpour drummed a relentless rhythm on the concrete around him. His footsteps echoed in the alleyway, hollow and uncertain, mirroring the tempest raging within, shame and frustration wrestling beneath the surface, threatening to swallow the flickering embers of resolve. He paused beneath a cracked street lamp, the light fractured by the rain into shards of cold electric blue. The city breathed around him, alive and indifferent, whispering secrets through the scuttle of leaves and the distant wail of sirens, a night alive with hidden peril and unspoken truths. Ethan pulled his collar higher as the wind sharpened, tossing dark curls across his brow. His green eyes narrowed, a mixture of exhaustion and simmering resolve gripping him tight. The scene of his public failure, lectures sharp and voices colder, played behind his eyelids, but within those fractures of shame was a fragile, stubborn pulse. Somewhere beneath the rubble, a story waited to be found, a truth that could unchain him from the shadows. From the edge of the glow, a sudden movement caught his eye, a figure blurred beneath a cascade of rain, bent and trembling. A woman, her silhouette fragile against the storm, shoulders shaking with silent weeping. Her hair was plastered damp to pale skin, dark eyes glistening with unshed tears. Instinct flared a glimmer of warmth cutting through the cold. He stepped closer, rain mingling with despair in the air. "Hey!" His voice was rough, barely more than a breath, yet it reached her across the distance. She didn't look up. The weight of her sorrow hung thick, palpable, drawing him in like a fragile beacon. The scent of wet earth and the distant city intertwined, a symphony of loneliness and quiet hope. Ethan's fingers brushed the worn leather of his jacket as he debated whether to retreat into the safety of solitude or reach out into uncertainty. "Why are you out here alone?" he ventured, voice softer, edged with tentative concern. Her breath caught, murmuring words lost beneath the patter of rain. A shudder passed through her frame, a silent plea. Ethan's gaze dropped to the delicate pendant glinting faintly at her neck, an ornate, silver locket, the clasp worn and weathered. His heart clenched. In that simple, shimmering piece lay a vulnerability he recognized, a whisper of stories untold. He reached out, a hesitant gesture of connection amid the storm's harsh embrace. The world blurred, a flicker of neon and rain and the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. In that suspended moment, two lives, stranded in their own tempests, found fragile alignment. Ethan's breath steadied, a new urgency blooming in his chest. The alleyway, the rain, the lost woman all converged in a quiet promise that this encounter was no chance accident, but the first step away from the shadows. The night deepened around them, a veil woven with danger and desire. Yet beneath its dark tapestry flickered a spark, tender, fierce, and irrevocable. And as the rain traced slow paths down the curve of the woman's cheek, Ethan felt the stirring of fate, the compelling force that would unravel secrets, bind hearts, and challenge the darkness head-on. His eyes met hers, vivid and lost and shimmering with unshed storms. He offered a fragile smile, a promise carried on the breath of wind. In the city's restless pulse, beneath rain's relentless chorus, a story was waiting to be told, and Ethan had just found the first seed of hope. The camera lingers on the glint of the locket against her breast, rain-soaked and radiant, a symbol of love and vulnerability, a key to redemption yet to come. The city was drenched, rain crashing down in sheets that blurred the neon glare into liquid pools of shifting color. Ethan's footsteps pounded pavement slick with fresh downfall, his leather jacket soaked and heavy, sticking cold and clammy against his skin. The scent of wet asphalt mixed with the faint tang of sea salt, carried in from the harbor beyond the steel and glass jungle. Each breath he drew was shallow and sharp, mist unfurling with the rhythm of the rain. Ahead, a collapsed figure huddled beneath the weak glow of a cracked streetlight. Ethan's gaze locked on the woman, her shoulders shaking, tears catching raindrops as they traced silent paths down her pale cheeks. She was soaked to the bone, the shimmer of her soaked hair clinging to the contours of her face. Vulnerable. Lost. His chest tightened, a pulse waking amid the numbness. Something stirred instincts, buried kindness that still reached through the fog of his uncertainty. The urge to help broke through, raw and urgent. "Hey," he called softly, voice rough from disuse but resolute. "Are you all right?" She flinched, lifting her eyes. In their depths, he caught a flicker of desperation, the kind that threatened to drown. I need help," she whispered, voice cracking as the storm rumbled low above. Ethan crouched, tucking her shivering form beneath his jacket. The cold bite of rain was relentless, but his warmth was steady, a fragile shield against the cruelty that writhed invisibly beneath the city's surface. "What happened?" He pressed gently. Her hesitation was a heartbeat too long. "Bad people," she murmured, glance darting toward the darkened alley. A sharp crack of thunder rolled overhead, a warning or a promise. Ethan's jaw hardened. This was more than chance, it was a summons. He reached into his pocket, fingers closing around the cold steel of a lighter, the flame small but defiant against the deluge. Lighting a cigarette, he offered it silently. She accepted, a brief flutter of gratitude flickering across her face. Rain trailed like a living veil as they huddled beneath the meager shelter of an awning, shadows pressing in like the ghosts of secrets yet to speak. Ethan's eyes scanned the encroaching darkness, the labyrinth of shadowed alleys and smugglers' paths he had once thought he knew. "I'm Ethan," he said quietly, a fragile bond forged in the storm. "And I don't usually help strangers, but sometimes you have to risk the rain." Her name was Clara. In the space between droplets, amid the neon-lit rain, Ethan felt the stirrings of purpose, of story not just to uncover, but to live. The hunger for truth and justice ignited, faint yet fierce. But beneath the pulse of hope, coils of danger tightened unseen. The city never forgot its debts. Shadows lengthened towards them, whispers of power and peril weaving a dark symphony. As rain blurred the edges of reality and desperation, Ethan held Clara close, a silent vow nestled between their breaths. The locket she wore trembled against his chest, its delicate frame a whispered promise of vulnerability and love something worth fighting for. The world around them seemed to hold its breath a moment suspended between storm and solace. Ethan's emerald eyes narrowed against the rain's bite, haunted by ghosts, yet burning with a newly kindled flame. What price would he pay for the truth? And how far could love push a man wading through darkness? The night whispered its secrets, but this story was his to write. And as the neon rain washed away old regrets, Ethan stepped forward, caught between fear and the fierce promise of redemption. The city's pulsing neon signs bled into the rain, turning the night streets into a kaleidoscope of colors bleeding together, as if the darkness itself was fracturing beneath the weight of secrets. Ethan's leather jacket clung tightly, drenched and cold, a shield against the storm outside and within. The grip of fear twisted in his gut, but beneath it lay a fierce, trembling ember of purpose. Clara, the woman whose tears first ignited that fragile spark, walked beside him through these shadowed alleys with a growing quiet strength. Their footsteps echoed in tandem against the graffiti-laced walls, each step a fragile claim against the peril they both sensed but couldn't yet define. "You realize this isn't safe," Ethan whispered, voice tight with unsaid fears as they ducked into the narrow refuge of a dim cafe hidden from the glint of streetlights and watchful eyes. She nodded, eyes clouded yet resolute. "It never was. But I can't keep living in shadows." Between sips of bitter coffee and the din of muffled conversations, they unearthed scraps of her fractured story, veiled threats, silent watchers, a life trapped beneath the iron fist of a Mafia kingpin named Vincent. Every revelation ratcheted the tension tighter, a noose woven from desperation and courage. Ethan's instincts as a journalist clashed with his heart's whispered warnings. Each discovery was a double-edged sword, the promise of a breakthrough and the threat of catastrophe. Yet Clara's trust, fragile and rare, rooted him in a purpose beyond his own redemption. Their alliance blossomed in stolen moments, furtive exchanges of information, cloaked in codes and careful glances. They learned to navigate the labyrinth of danger together, sharing fragile victories over whispered crimes and hidden oppressions. But risk begat consequence. Ethan's presence in the underworld's orbit did not go unnoticed. The shadows lengthened, and with them, the gaze of Vincent's henchmen, cold and unyielding. One night, as rain veiled the city in a trembling hush, a narrow escape from an ambush left Ethan breathless and shaken. His heart thundered against his ribs, the snarling night both enemy and accomplice. Back in the safety of Clara's dim apartment, the tension cracked, fear bleeding through their poised facades. Ethan's fingers gripped the chipped porcelain cup, knuckles white. "This is bigger than I thought. I'm not sure I can." Her voice cut through, fierce and steady. "We can't turn back. Not now." Their eyes locked, the bond forged in fear and hope now tempered by resolve. Ethan swallowed the tremor in his voice. "Then we do this together." The days that followed were a precarious dance between light and shadow. Each new piece of the puzzle was a victory tinted with sacrifice, uncovering Vincent's reach into the city's veins, exposing layers of corruption entwined with violence. Yet, with every step forward, the stakes climbed. Ethan's byline was whispered in hushed tones, his identity a beacon to enemies and allies alike. Clara's world narrowed to whispered phone calls and cautious looks over Rain's streaked shoulders. One evening, beneath a sky swollen with storm, Ethan cradled the delicate silver locket Clara wore, a symbol of vulnerability and clandestine strength. Within, a tiny, faded photograph, a glimpse into a life shrouded by unspoken truths. A cold wind swept through the cracked window, scattering rainbows in fractured shards across the worn floorboards. Ethan's chest tightened with the weight of what he now carried, not just a story, but a responsibility that tangled his fate irrevocably with hers. Suddenly, a sharp rap echoed at the door, sound heavy with menace and urgency. Time froze as their eyes met, the haunting truth settling like frost. Imminent danger was closing in. Ethan moved to the window, heart hammering in his chest as he peered into the storm. Figures loomed in the wet darkness, slow and deliberate, shadows incarnate. He turned back, voice low, resolve hardening. It's no longer just about the story. It's about surviving what's coming. In the narrow space between fear and hope, love's fragile flame flickered, belated, fragile, but unwavering. The rain-slicked streets swallowed the approaching shadows, and the city held its breath, awaiting the storm's next reckoning. The neon rain carved slick rivers through the city's shadowed veins as Ethan trailed Clara through a narrow alley, each step echoing the pounding storm within him. The night was suffocating, strings of light fractured against the wet asphalt, reflections distorted like the fragile facades they both wore. He watched her closely. The woman whose tears that night had sparked something long dormant now seemed threaded with secrets deeper than any darkness he'd chased. The weight of truth pressed around him, tightening like the relentless rain drumming their shoulders. Clara's glance was quick, a flash of panic in the sea of her guarded silence. Ethan felt the fragile bond between them stretch taut, threatening to snap under the forces unseen but all too real. "You're hiding something," he said quietly in the press of the storm, voice nearly lost in the wash of thunder and splattering neon. His green eyes, fierce yet weary, searched hers for trust. She hesitated, breath hitching, then finally whispered, "I'm not who you think I am." The word struck like a blow, fracturing the tentative hope he had nurtured. His heart thudded hard, a dissonance between love and revelation. "Who are you, Clara?" His voice was soft but edged, the man caught between desire and dread. Her eyes fell, shadows pooling beneath her lashes. "Vincent's wife." The name rolled off her tongue, a curse and a confession entwined. The ruthless Mafia boss whose grip tightened on the city and now, it seemed, on Clara's life. Ethan staggered backward, the rain suddenly colder, harsher. The locket she wore gleamed wet and sorrowful against her chest, a fragile emblem of love and vulnerability caught in a cold world. "Your wife?" His voice cracked, disbelief spiraling into shock. The ground beneath him felt treacherous. "Yes." Her whisper was barely audible, trembling with fear and resolve. "And I'm trapped." The city seemed to close around them, the moody shadows stretching longer, deeper, as if the night itself recoiled at the truth. Ethan's mind raced the threat, the hidden dangers, the lies tangled with love and desperation. His story, his chance to rise, now bridled by a shocking betrayal that fractured everything he believed. Yet beneath the betrayal flickered a fragile ember of something fierce, an urge to protect, to fight for a love bearing scars none could see. Rain cascaded over them, washing the city in cold light. The danger was no longer distant but immediate, coiled like a serpent in the alleys behind. As Ethan's hand brushed Clara's, the locket swung gently, a heartbeat between them, fragile yet steady. In that suspended moment, his world shifted irrevocably. Hope tangled with peril, love shadowed by ruthless power. A voice shattered the silence, a low murmur from the dark, the closing footsteps of Vincent's henchmen drawing near, their presence a lethal whisper in the night's cold breath. Ethan's gaze hardened, a fire igniting behind his green eyes. The choice was clear and brutal: heart or survival, truth or surrender. He pulled Clara close, voice fierce yet tender. "We leave tonight." The rain intensified, blurring the world into streaks of neon and shadow as they vanished into the twisting alleys, pawns and players in a dangerous game where love and death danced on the knife's edge. The camera lingers on the swinging locket, its gleam a fragile promise amidst the looming storm, the emblem of vulnerability, hope, and the battle yet to come. The city drowned in rain, relentless and unyielding, each drop a cold hammer against the fractured glass of forgotten dreams. Ethan stumbled through shadowed alleys where neon flickered like dying stars, throwing fractured light on puddles that mirrored his fractured hope. His leather jacket clung like a second skin, sodden and heavy, the chill seeping through, mirroring the barren ache hollowing his chest. Around him, the world was swallowed by a suffocating silence that pressed against his temples, broken only by distant sirens and the occasional slam of a shuttered door. The relentless rain obliterated footsteps, masking his retreat from a nightmare unfolding faster than he could catch breath. Clara's voice echoed in his mind, soft and desperate moments before the chase began, a warmth now eclipsed by fear's cold shadow. They had run through these streets, locked in a dance of desperation, pursued by ghosts with merciless intent. And now, everything was unraveling. In his overworked hands, the battered recorder, the file sproof of a story that had breathed life only to choke on betrayal. The data was gone, lost in the chaos of their flight, vaporizing the fragile chance at redemption and truth. His face, streaked with rain and exhaustion, twisted as he sank against a graffiti-marred wall, the cold seeping deep into his bones. The green of his eyes dulled beneath heavy lids, reflecting a storm more violent than the one sweeping the streets, a tempest of loss, fear, and the crushing weight of failure. The locket he carried slipped free, clattering softly to the wet pavimenta, small emblem of love and vulnerability abandoned amidst the ruin. The picture inside, faint beneath the rain's assault, seemed to weep beside him, a ghost of warmth fading in the chill night. Silence engulfed him, vast and empty, the city a vast cavern echoing the shattered fragments of his soul. Memories flickered, warmth turned to shadow, the embrace of hope now cold ash. A distant thunderclap rolled over the rooftops, shaking the night as if the heavens themselves mourned with him. Ethan's breath hitched, the cold bite of despair wrapping tighter, an unseen noose drawing him into oblivion. He reached out, fingers trembling over the damp stone of a nearby wall, seeking something to hold onto. But the only touch was the rain, indifferent and merciless, washing away even the faintest traces of light. Words failed him. Only the heavy silence remained, a suffocating shroud that pressed him lower into the depths of oblivion. As shadows folded in, the city stood still, bearing witness to a man losing himself, feeling dark, fading fast. And in that chasm, no hope stirred, only the cold promise of night, relentless and unyielding. The cold air of the prison cell clung like a suffocating shroud as Ethan sat on the worn, metal bench, the faint flicker of a dying overhead light casting long shadows that tattooed the walls with silent despair. The harsh clang of the heavy steel door echoed through the empty corridors beyond, an oppressive reminder of both physical and emotional captivity. His green eyes, once vibrant with hope and defiance, now flickered with exhaustion and resignation, a slow erosion of spirit mirrored in the hollow silence around him. The dampness seeped through his threadbare jacket, chilling him to the bone as raindrops outside drummed insistently on rusted window bars, a ceaseless tattoo of isolation and torment. The locket, warm against his chest in the chaos of flight, now lay cold and forgotten in the corner, its silver surface dulled by grime and neglect. It was a fragile emblem of love and vulnerability, now severed by betrayal and the crushing weight of exposure. Clara sat opposite, a shadow of herself, bruised by unseen battles and silent tears. Her gaze averted, tracing patterns on the cracked concrete floor, a fragile barrier shielding both from the looming presence of Vincent's reach. Ethan's breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, the stale air thick with unspoken fears. His hands, once steady in pursuit of truth, clenched the rusty bars with desperation, a silent plea woven into the cold iron. "We're trapped," he whispered, voice frayed, but not broken. The words hung between them, fragile and trembling, consumed quickly by the cavernous silence. A rat scurried in the corner, its skittering footsteps piercing the void, an eerie, minute reminder of life persisting in shadows and decay. The sound echoed, magnified within the claustrophobic bounds, painting a haunting lullaby of powerlessness. Outside, thunder grumbled in the distance, rolling with a dreadful inevitability, while flashes of lightning cast jagged chiaroscuro against the damp, graffiti-stained walls. Ethan leaned his head against the bars, eyes fluttering closed, his mind unraveling the tangled threads of trust and treachery that had ensnared them. The shock of betrayal by those closest settled like ash over smoldering embers of faith, threatening to extinguish the last spark. Darkness deepened around them, whispering promises of oblivion, swallowing breaths and hopes alike. The rain outside tapered to a soft, sorrowful drizzle, a spectral veil over the city of secrets and broken dreams. In that vast void, Ethan's world contracted to the singularity of silency, a void where love was fractured and the sting of loss became an unyielding storm. He opened his eyes just once, to gaze upon Clara's slumped figure, finding there a reflection of his own despair, isolated and fragile. The room seemed to contract, walls leaning inward, suffocating, as if to crush the very memory of hope. Ethan exhaled, a breath lost amid the shadows. And in that silent abyss, the heartbeat of a man breaking flowed steadily into the void, waiting, perhaps, for a flicker of light to return. The dim, solitary cell seemed to contract around Ethan, its oppressive silence a heavy shroud that pressed upon him relentlessly. Outside, the rain hammered the steel window bars, a relentless percussion on life's brittle cage. Shadows clung to the corners, draping the room in darkness so profound it blurred the edges of time and memory. Ethan sat on the cold concrete floor, knees drawn close, the bruises on his wrists and face aching faintly beneath the numbness. The locket, once warm against his chest, lay forgotten beside him on the cold ground. Its silver surface, dulled by grime and time, glinted faintly in the faint light, a fragile emblem of love and vulnerability, tethering him to a past slipping swiftly from reach. His mind churned, replaying moments shattered by fury and betrayal. The revelation that Clara was Vincent's wife had struck him like a bolt of lightning, igniting a storm of confusion and despair that threatened to consume any lingering hope. Their attempted escape, the frantic chase through rain-soaked alleys, now felt like a cruel dream slipping away. His breath came in shallow, uneven strokes, each inhale a battle against the suffocating weight of powerlessness. The memory of Clara's tear-streaked face haunted him, her whispered pleas a fragile thread in the vast tapestry of treachery that bound them. He pressed the back of his hand to his face, wiping away the phantom tears that threatened to betray his shattered resolve. A faint sound stirred Hima's soft, deliberate scrape of claws on stone. Max, crouched outside the cell door, his eyes shining with unwavering loyalty and silent encouragement. The dog's presence was a solitary beacon in the storm, a reminder of steadfast companionship amid the engulfing darkness. Ethan's gaze locked with Max's, the barnacle of despair loosening its grip just enough to allow a tremor of strength to flicker beneath the surface. In the eerie stillness, a single word lingered unspoken but potent, "Not yet." From the depths of his isolation, a distant memory surgayed, a detail overlooked, a glimmer of truth hidden in the chaotic dance of shadows. It was faint, like the first fragile bloom after a long winter, but undeniable. He shifted, the cold biting into his skin, but a seed of clarity took root. The long, dark night had not claimed him yet. Outside, rain softened to a whisper, droplets catching a sliver of moonlight as if reflecting an unseen hope. Ethan closed his eyes, drawing in a slow, steady breath. The weight of betrayal and loss had not extinguished his fire. A fragile vow blossomed in the depths of despair, not of surrender, but of resistance, resolved to grasp the slender thread of redemption dangling just beyond the abyss. The camera lingers on the locket, glinting faintly in the cold darkness, the last comforting heartbeat amid the storm before fading slowly to black. The rain had slowed to a persistent drizzle, the city's neon lights casting blurred halos through the mist that mingled with the damp air. Ethan stood beneath a fractured street lamp, the pool of faded yellow light barely reaching his soaked leather jacket. His breath came in steady clouds, visible and tangible in the chill night, yet within the cold air was the quiet stir of something he hadn't felt in weeks, a fragile, flickering hope. Clara's words echoed through his mind, mingling with the rain's soft rhythm. Despite betrayal, danger, and the heavy weight of secrets, a small flame of resolve had been ignited deep within him. His green eyes scanned the shadowed alleys with renewed attention, not as a beaten man, but as one beginning to understand the contours of the storm he must navigate. The wet pavement beneath his boots was slick, reflecting the city's fractured neon tapestry, a kaleidoscope of deep blues and reds that danced with the rain. A stray cat darted from under a dumpster, its movement swift and sure, a small emblem of life persevering amid darkness. Ethan's hand instinctively brushed the worn locket resting against his chest beneath the jacket's collar. The delicate silver casing held more than a picture. It was a talisman of vulnerability and love, fragile yet unyielding. A sudden breeze swept through the street, lifting loose papers, and the faint scent of jasmine from a nearby gardenia, muted promise of renewal, whispered across the urban sprawl. Ethan pulled his coat tighter and exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing ever so slightly. "This isn't over," he murmured to himself, voice rough but edged with nascent strength. "Not yet." Turning away from the flickering lamp, he stepped further into the city's veins, where shadows whispered of danger but also of answers waiting to be claimed. The wet alleys bore secrets, hidden truths needing illumination, and Ethan was ready, if only tentatively, to face them. Neon signs flickered overhead, one humming a broken tune in the drizzle, a melody touched with melancholy and hope. The city, so often suffocating, now seemed a stage where the next act of his journey would unfold. The rain, symbolic both of cleansing and impending peril, fell steadily, softening edges, washing away the grime of past failures but also heralding the storm to come. Ethan's gaze lifted to the distant skyline, where clouds thinned, letting streamers of moonlight spill like silver threads through the dark fabric of night. It was a glimpse, faint and fleeting, but unmistakably real. The world held a breath with him, poised between past and future. A whispered echo in the rain, a step forward in the shadows, fiery resolve wrapped in uncertainty. Ethan's fingers brushed the cold metal of the locket once more, gripping not just a symbol, but a lifeline. The night pulse quickened, carrying with it the fragile promise that change was possible, beginnings awaited in the heart of darkness. And as the city's symphony swelled around him, Ethan took that first, trembling step beyond despair, toward the fight ahead. The flicker of neon rain painted the edges of his silhouette, a figure no longer swept helpless by the storm, but stirring with the strength to face it. The rain had lightened to a fine mist, blurring the edges of the neon-lit city streets, but in Ethan's mind, the clarity was sharp and sudden. Standing before the towering facade of the underground club, Vincent's Dominion felt the cold steel of resolve settle in his bones. Each breath was slow and measured, the pounding storm within tempered by the fragile calm of purpose. His leather jacket, soaked just hours before with the weight of doubt, now clung to him as a second skin, armor against the menace lurking just beyond the heavy iron doors. Clarence's whispered warnings echoed, but they were no longer chains but sirens calling him onward. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and murmured threats, a pulsing heartbeat of danger wrapped in velvet and venom. The glow of red lights kissed faces scarred by power, and shadows stretched deep into corners where secrets were currency and trust was a blade twisted between enemies. Ethan moved with quiet confidence, his footsteps soft yet resolute against the marble floor slick with spilled drinks and whispered fears. His camera and recorder were tucked inside his jacket, weapons of truth in a war of silence. From the shadows emerged figures, Vincent's men checking identities with cold, practiced eyes. Ethan met them with steady gaze, the flickers of fear that once danced in his chest subsiding beneath a fierce determination. "I'm looking for him," he said simply. They exchanged guarded glances but parted in spoken acknowledgement of the storm to come. In a cramped back room, Vincent awaited, a black silhouette etched by the ominous red light. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, studied Ethan with primal calculation. Words were weapons here, and every glance was a threat. Ethan met Vincent's glare, voice firm despite the undercurrents of danger. "I know who you are, what you do. And it ends now." Vincent's laugh was a low rumble, a challenge flung into the air like a gauntlet. "Do you? Or do you only know the story I let you see?" Time seemed to stretch, the air crackling with tension. Ethan pulled from his jacket the recorder, the device that had captured whispered deals, hidden payments, haunting confessions. He pressed play. The room filled with the unmistakable voices of corruption and ruthlessness, Vincent's presence laid bare by the very words he intended to keep secret. The Mafia boss's expression tightened, the mask slipping for a fraction of a heartbeat, betrayed by fear and fury. Ethan's voice was steady, filled with the weight of all he'd endured. "These truths will see the light. No longer shadows to hide behind." The room's shadows sharpened and twisted as Vincent's men surged forward, but Ethan stood firm, heart pounding with the rhythm of defiance. As the first rays of dawn bled through the city's silhouette, news vans swarmed like hungry wolves, broadcasts ignited, and the hidden empire trembled under the exposure of its sins. Ethan looked to Clara, her eyes shining with awe and tentative hope, the locket catching the sunlight in a blaze of soft fire, fragile yet fierce, symbolizing the love that had rekindled his spirit. The walls of fear and silence crumbled as the city awoke to justice, and Ethan, once ensnared in shadows, now stood a beacon of truth and redemption. The rain ceased entirely, the storm giving way to fragile light, and as the morning bloomed, so too did the promise of a new beginning. Ethan exhaled, voice low yet triumphant, "It's not over. But this is our moment." The camera lifted, capturing the first brilliant hues of sunlight piercing the dark mist, casting long, hopeful shadows over the streets. In that fragile dawn, Ethan tasted victory not just in the story told, but in the resilience of the heart that dared to fight. The city, rain-washed and gleaming, whispered a new secret: redemption through love and courage, even in the darkest night. The courtroom floodlights pierced through the fog like divine daggers, casting long, sharp beams across faces both yearning and fear-filled. Ethan stood tall, shoulders squared and heart unwavering, beneath the weight of truth laid bare. The rain, once a relentless tormentor, had slowed to a drizzle, its cleansing rhythm now a soundtrack to an unfolding victory of justice. Behind the courtroom windows, the neon city pulsed in muted hues, shadows retreating before the growing dawn. The streets, once veiled in silence and fear, now hummed with a tentative promise, whispers of change stirring through the night air. Ethan's gaze swept the room, reporters scribbling rapidly, cameras capturing every word, and most of all, Clara, standing strong yet serene, her soaked hair framing a face that bore the marks of survival and newfound hope. In her palm, the silver locket shimmered quietly, a symbol of vulnerability and unbreakable bond. The thick air carried the crisp scent of rain-washed asphalt and aged leather, mingling with the faintest hint of jasmine. Clara's subtle perfume, weaving around Ethan's senses, a tender thread of light in the darkness. Vincent sat behind the defense table, shackled not just physically but morally, unraveling under the unyielding gaze of exposure. His empire crumbled not with violence but with the sting of revelation, secrets peeled away like greasy layers of a rotted wound. Ethan stepped forward, voice low yet firm, each carefully chosen word a hammer strike against corruption. The scars of his journey, the betrayals, the loss, the midnight fears now fueled a righteous fire. His past doubts faded, replaced by clarity and peace born of purpose fulfilled. "This city deserves to breathe free," Ethan intoned, the voice carrying the weight of countless untold stories and sacrifices. "It deserves light where shadows reigned." Outside, the rain ceased entirely. A shaft of sunlight broke through the dissipating clouds, spilling gold onto wet pavements. It washed over Ethan's face, awakening a smile tired but triumphant. He looked at Clara, their eyes locking with the silent understanding forged in fire. "We did this together," he whispered, the words more vow than statement. The courtroom thundered in applause, a crescendo of truth and justice swelling against the remnants of fear. Vincent's arrest was more than a moment of legal triumph. It was the poetic culmination of a journey through darkness into light, a personal redemption etched in courage and love. That night, beneath the city's slowly clearing skies, Ethan and Clara walked the rain-slick streets hand in hand. The locket caught the fading neon one last time, a beacon of vulnerability transformed into strength. Their steps echoed softly, a rhythm of futures rewritten, each stride a testament to love's power to redeem and rebuild. As dawn painted the horizon in hues of amber and rose, the shadows melted away, leaving a city reborn and two hearts finally free. Ethan's heart beat steady, his soul unshackled. The storm had passed, replaced by the tender light of a new beginning. The camera pulls back slowly, the soft glow of sunrise bathing the city, a poetic tableau of redemption through love, the enduring promise where darkness once held sway. A final shot of the locket, gleaming softly in the morning sun, as the screen fades to warm golden light. A gentle dawn crept over the city, casting a soft, golden hue that filtered through the rectangles of glass and steel. Ethan stood quietly on the rooftop of a high-rise, overlooking the city he'd fought so hard to save from the shadows. His coat, soaked and heavy, clung to him like memories long past. His eyes reflected the dawn, bright with quiet resolution, tender with the weight of forgiveness and love. The rain had ceased hours ago, leaving behind a fragile, shimmering calm on the glass beneath him. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against the worn leather of the locket Clara had gifted him, the small, silver frame warm against his palm, holding a faded photograph of her, smiling softly, as if to reassure him of the love they fought so fiercely to preserve. He exhaled slowly, the cool air filling his lungs, and looked out over the awakening metropolis. The streets below shimmered with dew, the shadows retreating in the waking light, revealing the city's resiliency, its capacity for renewal and hope. Somewhere beneath the rooftops, life moved forward, untouched and unbroken. The city's pulse was steady, a rhythmic beat that echoed within him, grounding him amid the quiet chaos left behind. Ethan's gaze softened, and a faint, peaceful smile curved his lips. His journey, marked by betrayal, loss, redemption, had finally begun to settle into stillness. He whispered softly to the wind, "It's quiet now. We're free." His voice, husky yet calm, carried a vow and acknowledgement that the storm inside him had broken, replaced by the gentle dawn of understanding. Behind him, the skyline stretched like a promise, the first tender rays of sunlight igniting a new chapter. The rain had washed away the darkness, leaving only the luminous traces of love, truth, and a hope reborn. Ethan turned, footsteps light and sure, each step a testament to the transformation from chaos to clarity, from despair to peace. In the stillness of the morning, he finally understood that love's enduring light had guided him through the shadows, carving a path toward the dawn. And as he descended into the city, the world seemed to breathe anew, embracing the promise of renewal and the eternal power of love's redemption. The sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns onto the quiet room where Ethan sat, cradling Clara's hands gently in his own. His face was soft, lined with the weight of everything he'd endured: betrayal, loss, and finally, peace. The city outside was stirring anew, dawn breaking over a skyline freed from shadows, a metaphor etched into his battered armor of hope. In that luminous silence, Ethan's gaze drifted to the locket resting on the desk, a simple, silver frame holding a faded image of Clara. His fingers brushed it reverently, the ache of yesterday softened by understanding. Love's enduring truth had carried them through darkness and doubt, forging a bond that no storm could shatter. Clara, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, offered him a gentle smile, one that spoke of forgiveness, of healing's gentle victory. Her voice was a whisper, but its words carved in the air like poetry. "You found me, even in the shadows," she said softly, voice trembling with emotion. "And I trust you, Ethan." He exhaled slowly, a fragile but unwavering resolve blooming within. Love has a way of rewriting everything. Even the darkest stories can find light. Her hand tightened around his, silent acknowledgement of a journey transcending pain, a testament that love, bravely faced, could redeem even the deepest wounds. The rain had given way to sunlight, washing away the remnants of a tempest, symbolic of the reconciliation and renewal that now steadied their shared path. In the quiet that followed, Ethan leaned forward and pressed his forehead against her hand, feeling truth settle into his bones, the truth that love's power was infinite, unbroken by fear or betrayal. Outside, the city stretched in renewed clarity, the oppressive shadows lifted by dawn's promise. The shadows of the past, once so heavy, dissolved, leaving only the lingering glow of hope and the unspoken vow of forgiveness. Together, they rose, stepping into the radiant morning free from the storm, united by courage and an unbreakable love that had endured everything. The camera slowly pulled back, capturing the sun's first rays spilling over the city, illuminating the beginning of a new chapter, one where love's light broke through the darkness, bringing a peace that would endure beyond the shadows. The city awoke anew under a pale, golden sun that spilled through the open windows of the modest apartment. Shadows, once long and threatening, receded into the corners, replaced by the soft glow of dawn and eternal promise of peace. Ethan sat on the edge of the old wooden chair, the sun's warmth caressing his face. The photograph of Clara, glowing faintly with a newfound serenity, rested in his trembling hands, the locket gently flung open beside him, revealing the tiny, faded image of love's unassailable bond. Light spilled across the room in slow, deliberate waves, illuminating the simple but profound scene, the silent testament to journeys through darkness and the rebirth of hope. Outside, the rain had finally yielded to a clear sky. The city's heart, Beata, once shadowed maze, now pulsated with a quiet, unshakable strength. Ethan's eyes, deeply etched with what had been lost and what had been gained, held a tranquil resolve. His fingers brushed softly over the locket, the cool metal a reminder of vulnerability made resilient through love's unyielding embrace. His gaze drifted upward toward the window, watching as the first rays of sunlight kissed the rooftops and spilled pink into the awakening sky. In this luminous moment, the storm that had raged both outside and within finally settled, its ferocity replaced by a gentle, forgiving calm. The city breathed in the dawn's peaceful exhale, the shadows melting into a new day of renewal, of love unbroken in its infinite grace. Silent and still, Ethan rose from his seat, each movement deliberate and calm, embodying a quiet victory born of resilience and grace. The room, bathed in a warm, amber light, echoed with a profound unspoken truth. Love's enduring power had woven a tapestry of redemption in the face of chaos. He closed his eyes, taking a deep, grounding breath, feeling the pulse of his heart steady, sure, free from shadows. Beneath the gentle hush of morning, he understood that peace was not the absence of turmoil but the acceptance of love's eternal embrace. The camera slowly pulled back, capturing the sun's golden rays spilling into the room, bathing the scene in a luminous glow, an infinite symbol of hope, love, and unbreakable serenity. As silence stretched, like the infinite horizon, the image lingered, an ode to redemption's quiet victory, where light reigned supreme and love conquered all. What would you do if a stranger's kindness revealed a secret world? Share your thoughts below.